Welcome back to FM Story and the £1 billion Football Manager Experiment, the series where we take the weakest team in each country's top flight and hand them an unbelievable £1 billion, see whether money can truly change a club's destiny. We started the journey in Scotland with Livingston, 16 seasons, £1 billion, a new stadium, upgraded facilities and a couple of domestic cups, but never a Premiership title. European adventures brought a bit of excitement, but the real story became runaway wage bill and financial chaos that swallowed the club whole. Then we moved to Italy with Pisa. 8 seasons, another £1 billion spent, and once again, the pattern repeated. A brand new stadium, state-of-the-art facilities, and a wage bill that spiralled out of control. But on the pitch, mid-table mediocrity. Pisa proved, just like Livingston, that money can build infrastructure, but it can't guarantee success. And now, the experiment comes to England. Welcome to Burnley, a club expected to struggle in the Premier League, operating miles below the financial giants around them. Just like before, we made only one change. Burnley now have a bank balance of exactly £1 billion. Everything else, the squad, the facilities, the reputation remains untouched. So the question is simple. Will Burnley finally break the curse? Can they use their fortune, climb the Premier League? Or will they become the next club, burn through £1 billion and achieve nothing? Let's dive into the beginning of season 1 and find out whether Burnley can succeed where Livingston and Pisa have failed. So obviously, we can see from the season preview, Burnley predicted to finish well adrift of the safety in the Premier League. As you can see, we've added £1 billion to the bank balance. We've not changed anything else. So the wage budget is unchanged. The transfer budget's unchanged as well. There are obviously some existing debts which you haven't cleared, but hopefully the £1 billion should take care of them pretty quickly. In terms of the ground, the capacity of 22,546, a used capacity of 21,990. Some room for expansion. Whether we see that expand or not, we'll see, or whether they build a new ground. In terms of training, new facilities, pretty decent. I would expect to see them bumped up a bit during the save. And then looking at what we've got in terms of the squad and in terms of the wages already being spent, we've got Kyle Walker on 100,000 a week, Amanda Broyer on 60 grand a week, Hartman and Dubravka on 50. And for a Premiership side, I would say, that's quite a sensible wage spend as we sit at the moment. But as we've seen with Livingston and Pisa both so far, I think we're going to see this spiral massively out of control. And my one concern would be, like what happened with Livingston and Pisa, that wage was spiraled. But in the top divisions, I think the £1 billion is going to go less than it does in any of the other divisions, because it's going to cost so much more to keep up with everyone around them. Whereas Livingston, we lasted 16 seasons. Obviously with Pisa, the money only lasted 8 seasons. Are we going to get to 8 seasons with Burnley? Let's find out and see what happens in season 1. So, the end of season 1, and Burnley have managed to survive, finished in 16th. In fact, 2 of the promoted sides in Burnley and Sunderland both stayed up. West Ham, Wolves and Leeds all going down. Pretty close, in fact. They were probably safe by virtue of the fact that Wolves lost and the fact that Burnley won on the last day of the season against Wolves. In fact, that almost certainly did save them. Because if they'd lost that game and Wolves had won, they would have been down. Especially with both Sunderland and West Ham winning on the last day of the season as well. Looking in terms of the wage bill, obviously, unlike some of the other leagues, we've got massive wage bills at the top end with the bigger clubs. Burnley in 18th at 74.86 million. Like I say, I think I would expect to see that spiral within the next season or two as new players come in. As far as the season was concerned, they didn't get off to the best of starts. I mean, they picked up one win in the first 2 months of the league season, but they did make it through 2 rounds of the Carabao Cup, beating Huddersfield on penalties, beating Newcastle at home in the third round before getting knocked out 1-0 away at Liverpool in the fourth round. FA Cup, I mean, another penalty shootout win in the first round. Then they knocked out Walsall 3-0 before losing 1-0 away at Bournemouth in the fifth round. And then April and May were pretty disastrous. And as we say, if it wasn't for that last game of the season, I think they probably would have been down, given the other results that happened around them. So quite a bit of money spent in the end, 18.75 million, not an awful lot on the outgoings. Looking at it in order when the players came in. So they signed one player in the summer, which is Oriol Romeo, on a free transfer. He came in, played 40 games, did a decent job for them. And then they spent the money in January and signed Hossam Aouar for 6 million. He did okay when he came in. Probably the best signing had was Mohamed Darami coming in. He did a great job, 10 games, 3 goals, decent average rating for 12 million. And then a couple of players in on loan in Michael Cuisance, who barely played, and Arne Meyer, who barely played as well. Looking ahead, though, the loan deal for Florentino Luis, who was already at the club, is going to be turned into a permanent deal of 36.5 million, which is a big, big chunk of money to be spending. But he had a really decent season by the looks of things as well. And then looking at things, nearly 300 million gone from the bank balance, down to 712 million. You can see the transfer budget for next season's 49.5 million. The wage budget's been increased as well. And no changes to the ground, although the stadium DK has changed, but no changes to any of the other facilities either. So let's move on to season 2, and let's have a look and see whether that wage bill does start to spiral out of control, and whether they can survive another season in the Premier League. And so season 2, much, much better in the league, ended up finishing 13th. Although that bottom half of the table was pretty tightly packed. I mean, just 6 points between 12th and 18th. Fulham going down along with 2 newly promoted teams in Coventry and Hull. Ipswich also came up and they finished in 12th. Interestingly, Man City finished 4th and have a job available despite having won 5 of the last 5. Tottenham down in 10th. Palace down in 14th. Bournemouth just surviving relegation. Now, looking at the annual wage bill, like even the top clubs, the wage bill's gone up massively. Burnley's has gone from being sort of 75 million up to 92 million-ish. They haven't actually jumped as far up the table as wages as I was expecting them to. But it's once it starts going up, it just carries on going and going and going. There was an awful lot of money spent. 76 million they've spent. Obviously, we knew about the Florentino Luis deal, 36.5 million. We've got 13.75 million for Jadon Slory, who came in with 37 games, grabbed 5 goals. They then spent 12.25 million on Ryan, who obviously young player, one for the future. Obviously made a lot of appearances off the bench, given that he got 4 goals, but it only shows 1 appearance there. Fabio Vieira for 8.25 million had a decent season for them. Arne Meyer, who they had on loan last season and wasn't really involved, came in and did a job. Mario Martin, defensive midfielder coming in for Real Madrid, managed 25 starts, picked up quite a few yellow cards, had a decent season. And David Soria, who came in from Getafe in goal, didn't have a particularly great season. And then a couple of free transfers who didn't play at all. Emilio Lawrence, young. Ashton missing, young as well, but neither of them anywhere near ready for the first team. And then in terms of the outgoings, Josh Cullen left the club. Oriol Romeu, who came in on a free at the beginning of last season, it went out this season. But no real, what you would call first team regulars, apart from probably Josh Cullen, have left. Much better start to the league season, winning 3 out of the opening 4. I mean, it does help that 2 of the games were against newly promoted clubs in Coventry and Hull, but they did hammer Arsenal 3-0 at home, 3-0 up after 12 minutes and hung on in that one. Managed to make it past Port Vale in the second round of the Carabao Cup before going out to Aston Villa and getting hammered by Aston Villa twice in a week, basically 3-0 in the Carabao Cup and then losing 4-1 in the league. And then a dreadful run from the end of November all the way through December, all the way through January. No wins in the league. Knocked out of the FA Cup at the first time of asking. And a very inconsistent second half of the season. And the best part of another 300 million has gone from the bank balance. It's down to 428 million. The transfer budget has gone massively up for this season. About an extra 100 million in the transfer kitty. The wage budget's gone up as well. Again, no changes to the facilities in either the ground or in terms of the training facilities or the youth facilities. Now that they've finished mid-table in the league and they push on, what will they do for recruitment going into season 3? Find out. So season 3's in the books, another 13th place finish for the second season in a row, and a bit more comfortable in terms of staying up. Crystal Palace and Bournemouth going down on 31 points, Burnley 45 points and 14 points clear of the drop. And that wage bill has continued to spiral, now into the top 10 in the league. It's added 60 million to the wage bill in the 2 seasons since we started. A big activity in the transfer windows. 10% of the whole spend of the Premier League came from Burnley. Looking at the outgoings, first of all, not an awful lot in terms of key players going. And then in terms of the incomings, big money spent in January on Luca Bergman's goalkeeper, who's come in and done a decent job, but 32.5 million is an awful lot there. Mario Martin, who was on loan last season, has come in on a permanent deal for 27 million and has done a decent job. Max Johnston, right back, went in from Derby, nearly 15 million, and you've got to say he hasn't had the best of spells. I mean, they did only sign him in February, but he only started 1 game after that, which the amount of money they spent. Again, over 10 million on Diouf from Hull in February, and he started 7 games but scored 4 goals, 1 assist, 2 man of the matches, and a great average rating. So he's done a really good job. A pretty cheap deal to bring in Emi Buendia for 3.8 million. He, again, must have come mostly off the bench, didn't really start anything there. And then, probably in terms of what they've actually done, the best signing, Jackson Muleka, 28-year-old, come in. Only averages 6.89, but got 15 goals and 42 starts, which is pretty decent for a club at this level. Now, obviously, when we looked at the wage spend at the start of the save, Kyle Walker was only one on £100,000 a week. Obviously, as the wage bill spiraled, more and more people on over £100,000 a week. A lot of the new signings that have come in, Luis with his permanent deal, Darami, Muleka, Mario Martin, Slory, they're all over £100,000 a week. Kyle Walker's deal's about to run out. In terms of the start of the season, another decent start. 4 wins out of the opening 5 league games. As far as the Carabao Cup's concerned, they made it to the quarterfinals where they got beaten after a mammoth penalty shootout by Aston Villa. In the FA Cup, it was a 5th round exit at the hands of Brentford. And I think there was a couple of spells of dodgy results there, but certainly the start of the season they had really set them up for a decent run. And that 13th place finish again, it's back-to-back 13th place finishes. So no improvements to the facilities. The actual training facilities have dropped back from 16 to 15 there. So I think we might see in the near future a improvement there. And financially though, I mean, they've spent 800 million has gone from the bank balance in 3 seasons, down to 192 million in the bank balance. The transfer budget obviously is a lot less than it has been for the last 2 seasons. The wage bill is now, or the wage budget is now below what it was for the last 2 seasons as well. So is money running short? Are they starting to cut costs? We'll find out and see how season 14 goes. And so season 4, a bit of a drop on the pitch, gone down from 13th to 17th. And as you can see from the arrow, by winning that last game of the season against, I believe it's Tottenham. Yeah, by winning that last game of the season against Tottenham, and with Birmingham drawing against Sunderland, Southampton drawing against Wolves, and West Ham losing against Brighton, it means Burnley stay up by the skin of their teeth by 2 points. Had they lost that last game of the season, they would have been bottom of the table. In terms of the wage bill, it has come down. It was 135 million last season. Obviously, we knew when we looked at the transfer budget and the wage budget, they'd all come down. It's gone down by 24 million a year there. And remarkably, the bank balance has gone up by nearly 200 million. Now, part of that, and I did check, there's no new loan or debt being taken out, but part of that is on the 1st of January, a new general sponsor for 106 million. So obviously that's pumped some money into the club. And then they made a pretty decent net profit in the transfer market. They spent 67 million and they made back 109 million. Now, there's an awful lot of players have gone out. Bashir Humphreys has gone to Man City for 58 million. Lyle Foster's gone to Saudi Arabia for 23 million. Estevez has gone to Bournemouth for 21.5 million. So they're the big outgoings. Some incomings. In January, they spent 40 million on Chris Richards, which seems a bit of an overpay. They've picked up Lucas Hernandez from PSG. Aiden Heaven came in January as well, from Man United. In fact, they did an awful lot of business in January. In fact, all of their transfer business was done in January, and lots of defenders as well. There was obviously an issue that they were trying to address there in the second half of the season. I mean, the only transfer that wasn't in January was the Lucas Hernandez one that came at the end of the summer transfer window. And then on the pitch, not the best of starts to the league season. Only 1 win in the opening 3 months of the league season, which was at home against Everton. I mean, they did start with Man City and Chelsea. Man City knocked them out of the Carabao Cup in the 3rd round with a late goal from Ryan Cherky, which then led to another run of bad form, including a hammering from Sunderland in the league, a hammering from Tottenham. We picked up another win at the beginning of November against Southampton, but then again, lots of beats, quite a few draws. And then there was a bit of a decent run, February, March, which gave them a chance of staying up. And then obviously that win on the last day of the season, like we said, against Tottenham. I imagine it was pretty nervy after Tottenham pulled a goal back from Liam Delap in the 89th minute. But the real success of the season on the pitch was the FA Cup. We just got snuck past Rotherham in the third round, beat Bristol City at home in the fourth round, won in extra time at home to Newcastle in the fifth round, beat Norwich in the quarter-final, comfortable victory over Fulham in the semi-final, before unfortunately losing 2-1 against Arsenal in the final. Of the players that came in during the season, they look mostly to have come in at fairly decent wages relative to the players they are. Obviously, Lucas Hernandez has come in on a massive, massive wage. Immediately the highest paid player at the club. But now that we've seen a bit of an increase in the bank balance, largely due to that sponsor that came on board, are we going to see them spend a lot of money next season and try and push themselves back up the league table? So, season 5 done and dusted, and Burnley stay up again. Luckily, this season wasn't another couple of games longer, because that form that they had at the end of the season was a bit horrific, but they've survived. The bank balance has now come down to 109 million. Part of the reason for that is that they now have state-of-the-art training and youth facilities. So obviously an awful lot of money has gone into that. And the wage bill's gone back up. It's not quite at its highest in the SAFE so far, but it's gone up from 111 million to 129 million. They are now very much in danger of running out of money unless something dramatic happens soon. Again, they made a bit of a profit in the transfer market this season, but not as much as last season. Just the two players coming in, one of which, Spitzneister, coming in from Molde in July, 17 and 17.75 million. Attacking midfielder, forwards, got 11 goals in 40 games, so he's done a decent job. But then they've spent 8 million on Franz Kratzig from Brighton, who hasn't started a game since he came in January. And in fact, just made 2 substitute appearances in the league, and that was it. So that's a waste of 8 million, you would sort of say, given he hadn't exactly set the world alight at Brighton. But spend 8 million on someone and then not use them is a bit bizarre. In terms of the outgoings, a lot of players going out on loan. The main outgoing being Hartman, who had been first choice left back. He went out for 28 million at the start of the season to Tottenham. And a pretty sort of average start to the season. I mean, certainly the start of the season was dreadful. The only victory in the first couple of months of the season being against Mansfield in the Carabao Cup, before they were dumped out by Newcastle. First league win of the season, not till the end of October against Leicester. They did pick up a victory against Man City in the league. But then there was another bad run over the sort of festive period, from the middle of December through to early January. But then things did pick up January and sort of the end of January, beginning of February, certainly a lot better. Lost in extra time to Chelsea in the 5th round of the FA Cup. And then, I don't know whether they already thought they were safe, but the performances did drop off a cliff in that last couple of months after they went out with the FA Cup. So as we can see, just looking at this, there's only been 2 permanent managers since the SAFE started. Scott Parker went halfway through last season, replaced by Giorgio Contini, Swiss manager, who was previously manager at Young Boys. But going into season 6 with just 109 million in the bank, and with the wage bill as it is, are we going to get many more seasons from Burnley before £1 billion runs out? And the answer is no, there's not going to be many more seasons. In fact, season 6, they have run out of that £1 billion. They've got minus 49 million in the bank. On top of that, finishing 18th, 28 points from 38 games is pretty bad, especially when 31 would have kept them up in the league, which is, I think, probably the lowest it's been for many of the seasons that we've seen so far. Obviously, they were saved from truly being dreadful by the performances of Southampton and Fulham there. Wage-wise, kind of expected the wage budget to have decreased like it did after season 3, where they were starting to run out of money. But it's pretty much stayed as it was. They've also gone and spent 80 million, 49.5 million of that was on Amin Gouiri, who I think was on loan last season. And then the problem this season with it, as opposed to the last couple of seasons, is they didn't get anything back for any of the players. They got 125,000 from parts of loan deals, and that's it. So they've had a massive net loss in the transfer window. The wage bill stayed pretty much as it was. They've been relegated, and they've run out of the £1 billion that we started them with. And that brings Burnley's £1 billion experiment to a brutal end. 6 seasons, that's all it took to burn through every last penny of their fortune. What started with hope and ambition quickly spiralled into chaos. A couple of mid-table finishes hinted at stability, and that FA Cup final run gave us a glimpse of what might have been, but it wasn't enough. The spending never stopped, the wages ballooned, and the results dried up. By the end, Burnley weren't just out of money, they were £50 million in the red, and to make matters worse, they finished the season relegated to the Championship. £1 billion gone, a mountain of debt, and a place outside the Premier League. Just like Livingston and Pisa before them, Burnley proved once again that money can build dreams, but it can just as easily destroy them. The question now is simple. Who's next? And will any club finally break the curse of the £1 billion experiment? The journey continues.